Welcome to Monster Men.
We have a return guest. I checked. He was here on episode 158. One of my favorite people in the entire horror industry. Tim Waggoner is here. Even though in my name, I call him Tim Waggoner.
To remember how to spell it. I do the same thing.
I swear to God.
60 years and I do the same thing.
I called you Wagoneer last week.
The Waggoner.
Yep. I get that sometimes.
Which would be a great Western novel, The Waggoner.
Right. Well, see, my middle initial's E. So if you put that in there, I'm a time waggoner. So, yeah.
All right. So your middle initial's E. What does it stand for? Is it Edgar? Ernest?
No, Edward.
Edward. Okay.
Yeah. It's my dad's middle name. So he was a junior and he didn't want to do that. And his name's Orville. So he didn't want to do that to me. So he gave me his middle name.
My parents gave me Patrick, which was my grandfather, but the scumbag grandpa, the murderer, drunk, gambling lunatic.
Yeah. What's your point?
Well, he set the bar, and now I'm all right.
You're following in the footsteps.
Only as the drunk. I haven't killed 2 people yet.
I don't know. I've heard some of your stories.
It's good to specialize.
I've heard some of your stories. Maybe the bodies just haven't been found.
I may have killed 1 person. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't stick around to find out. So we are here. Last time we had Tim on here, he was promoting his book, Writing in the Dark, which is
phenomenal.
If you're a horror writer or I don't even care. It's not even horror writers. Any writer. It's a great book to follow. This time around, Tim snagged the job that I kind of wanted. We're related, Tim. We're going to talk about this. So, Tim, aside from I used to think I was the busiest writer in horror. Tim has far eclipsed me at this point because aside from writing original work, he also does a lot of novelizations, and he snagged the greatest triple play of all time. He's done the novelizations of X, Pearl, and Maxine, which we have to talk about this.
Unbelievable.
And we had Peter Polk on our show it was on Final Guys when Pearl came out, and I had reached out to him. I said, "Dude, I want to novelize. I want to do anything." You guys, but somehow you sneaked right in and you took it away. So we're gonna figure out how that happened.
Not really sure how. Daniel. I know Daniel Krauss. They contacted him and he suggested me. I know that part. And they just sent me an email and I was like, I just stare at it, going, "This can't be real." But when I responded, and it was just like, "Oh yeah, we'd like you to write just kind of an audition scene." So they gave me the scene with Howard and Pearl, doing it in the cabin with Meatloaf's character under the bed, and I'm like, "Of course you picked this one." So I did my best, and I think they didn't say, but maybe they did somewhere along the line afterwards, but I think it was an audition too. I think there were other people that might have been.
Would they send you a film of it or a screenplay?
No, they just sent me the script. Yeah, sent me the screenplay. I mean, and that the movie was already out, so it's not like they were that worried. And the screenplay was available because they have A24 has their own publishing arm, and so you could already get the screenplay from them. But yeah, they just sent me that, and yeah, I got the gig. So it's been really great working with them.
This is like an acting. This is like trying out for a part. I don't think I've ever heard of somebody trying out to do a novelization of a movie before.
It happened to me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying, have you experienced that in the past? Because you've done quite a few.
Yeah, I did. There were. Do you remember the TV series Sleepy Hollow came out a few years ago?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They decided to do a novelization for that, and Del Rey Books contacted me to do a proposal. And only after I submitted the proposal, they're like, "Well, we've had some other people do proposals too, so we'll let you know." And I was like, of course you're not going to tell me ahead of time, because what if I say screw it? You know what I mean? At that point, if you feel like, what's the point? So they eventually gave it to Keith DeCandido, who's done a million tie-ins. He's a great guy, so I didn't care. But it's nice to know ahead of time. So it's as far as I know, it's only happened to me twice, and this time I got the gig, so I'm not complaining.
Did they ever tell you who you were competing against?
No, I never asked.
It wasn't
I only knew
me,
it was Keith because the book came out. Now, well, good. I don't want to beat. I don't want to say I don't want to beat you. That doesn't sound good. I don't want to get a gig instead of you.
I would say I will do it if I can write with Tim. If we
That'd be cool.
That would be awesome. I've never co-written a book before in my life. I think that would.
I haven't either. I mean, novelizations are kind of like that because you got a script that somebody else has written. So it's weird because it's like a collaboration with somebody you're never going to talk to, and and it's not like they're going to change what they've done based on what you say, because it's written in stone.
So wait, did you get the novelization? Did you pass the audition for Maxxine and then you did a good job, so they gave you the other ones, or did it start with X? Or
it started with X.
And did you do a good job with that, and then they said go to do the other ones, or did they say you got all three?
I got the contract for the first one, and then I got the contract for the next two. So probably once they got a chance to see, because Ty West was actually involved in the process. They wanted me to send them I think 30 pages at a time, and so they could take a look at it, and Ty could take a look at it. And once they saw how fast I can write, they're like, "Okay, never mind. We'll just look at the whole book." But it was a little weird because usually, you do a novelization, and it doesn't matter how long the script is; it's not long enough to make a whole book. And even if there's extra scenes and things in it, it's just not. So you have to make stuff up. But Ty was like, "Nope, I don't want you to make anything up. I could make up, like what the characters were thinking, as long as it was, fit the scene and everything, and how I told the story in terms of like just language and things. But no, I couldn't add any kind of extra scenes or anything like that. It's stuff that I made up. So I did the Terrifier 2 novelization too, and half that book is stuff I made up, and they loved all the stuff I did. So it's just very different processes.
Terrifier 2 is a long movie that I can't imagine writing what was happening. Then the clown, did this weird thing for 45 minutes.
It must be like a 400-page book if you add it onto the screenplay.
No, they had never done books before, so they asked for 100,000 words, and I was like, most of the time you do 80 for a novelization, but I love Terrifier, so I'm like, okay, it's right up my alley. So the book. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're doing X now, a screenplay is like 90 pages, probably at best. How many words?
Sometimes 100 something.
Yeah, but X is like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't add to that, like how big is the final product of the book that you put out?
44,000 words.
Wow. So it's a novella, really.
Yeah. That's what they were fine with that, and I'm like, okay, I'm happy enough to write it that length.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll see what people think about it. Hopefully they'll like them, because they're all. I mean, I haven't finished Maxine yet, but I think it's going to come out to be about the same as the other two, because they're in general about the same length of script, and so about the same length of book. So I hope people like it. It'll be a, they kind of are packaging them to look sort of like retro pulp kind of novels. And so those things were about 50, 60,000, sometimes 40. So maybe the reading experience will be a lot like sort of the literary equivalent of the movie, not in that you won't get extra stuff, because there's some extra stuff, different things in the script, not a lot, but some, and I made sure to put all that in. And of course, I get to do the sort of deeper dive into the characters' perspectives. So that, that's always fun. So hopefully people enjoy that too.
I want to see how you describe the ball stomping in Maxine.
Yeah, I've already written that. I have to watching that movie. I was like, oh, that okay,
every guy groaned in the theater.
right, right.
All right, I got a couple of questions. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this. I have the novelizations of the original Star Wars movies, Star Wars Empire and Jedi.
Ooh.
And particularly the Star Wars one is thicker than the other two. And I also have like a comic book adaptation of it. And in both of them, they have like some of the deleted scenes, like the ones of Luke and Biggs on Tatooine at the beginning. Did you have access?
They have Jabba too. Jabba looked completely different in the comic book. He's like a humanoid kind of guy.
Yeah. Did you have access to anything like that, like deleted scenes or?
No, it's weird. Sometimes, and I don't know why they do this. I've never asked, but sometimes the scripts, well, actually, all the time, they number all the scenes, and they don't like reorder them. So if they decide to cut something out, they just write the word omitted, and I'm like, what the hell was there? Let me know what I would put it in the book if I could.
Yeah.
There were things that they changed, or things that they did cut out. Not a ton, but some. The Terrifier. I mean, people for Terrifier 2, that script was almost exactly like the movie. The only slight difference is like a corpse is in a chair as opposed to on the floor. That's stuff like that. Very, very minor.
Yeah.
So that leads to my second question. So you've got this screenplay. Do you then also just turn on the movie and sort of write a description of a scene to help fill it out? Like the alligator scene.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was almost like nonfiction at that point, describing something I'm seeing.
Yeah.
The first time I did it was with Terrifier. I think it was Terrifier 2, and I think I added too much because I could see too much. I could see like everything, and so I think I did a little of that with X2. Better with Pearl. Even though I watched the movie again, I'd seen I don't know how many times, but I watched it again as I wrote it. I started doing that with Maxine, and I was like, I'm just going to finish this one from the script and what I remember, and then I'm going to go back and watch and tweak it and maybe add in some other cool details and things that I see, just to see how this one, how that turns out.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
So, Pearl, which is a very different movie than X and X, Maxine, and Pearl seem like they're done by three different people because they're so different. Now, her monologue, which is the most powerful, I think it's the most powerful scene in all three movies. Did you take that from the screenplay and just put in everything she said? But how do you add the punch and the power to that when she's talking to her sister-in-law? Like, in your mind, like, how do I translate that to a book and give it that same kind of gut punch and power?
Yeah, there's no way to replicate it. But being able to have seen, how Mia Goth acted that. I mean, it's amazing. I remember watching in the theater just going, oh my God. Staying in the perspective and having her pay attention to the sister-in-law's reactions too. That helped because, I can build sort of a sense of, she's very unsure about what she's doing. She's not like other people. So reading her is not easy for her. She never would have told her any of this stuff, So I tried to do that and, tried to focus on kind of what she might be feeling during that time and let a little of that in. But mostly I just let the words stand for themselves because I just didn't think there was any way to do that. But what was nice about it, though, is that I could take that and, since I'd already seen the movie first, I could take that and apply it retroactively to everything else in the script because then I knew so much more about her. And so I could show like these kind of things are in her. I could show these kind of things she's struggling against. I can show them start to leak out emotionally for her in ways that would be internal. So you might not see it in the script. Or if I notice it in the script, I could like accentuate it a little bit. So I'm hoping that progression works really well for the novel.
I'm telling you, to me, that's one of the best scenes in a horror movie. I can't remember when I saw anything that good, that almost operatic. And she cemented herself as just one of the best. I will never call her a scream queen, but just one of the most solid actors in a horror movie of all time. Yeah. I don't envy you. I don't know if I could have taken that on. That's
it's really weird. Yeah, it's weird when you do this kind of stuff. And it's like when I wrote original adventures for the Supernatural brothers, the Winchester brothers. It's like in one level you're like, oh my God, everybody's going to be looking at this. And they're not at the moment, especially if it's not been announced. So that part's good, but eventually that people are going to be looking at it, and that no matter what you do, you can't please everybody. So you have to sort of almost pretend that doesn't exist, but at the same time, you're also thinking of the fans too. So it's this weird sort of split kind of creative perspective on it, I guess. I don't know how I do it. It feels like sort of like walking a tightrope is what it feels like.
It could paralyze a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it would.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why it doesn't me. I'm so far so good. Maybe someday it will.
By the way, here's the deal, because we're all three of us are of the same generation. We're in the I don't give an F about your thoughts stage of life. I think that helps.
It probably does, but I've done tie-ins for a couple decades, and it's just never. Sometimes it's a little harder to start, especially if I can't. Even with my original stuff, I feel like I have to find the door or find the window that's going to let me in to the world of the story, and sometimes that's a little tough. But once I do that, I'm usually good.
Okay, now you guys both write books that aren't novelizations of movies, and there's when you're talking about books and movies, there's always like, oh, the theme of this book is this, or the underlying meaning of this movie. And I'm a sucker for like those explainer videos on YouTube. Like I'm at work and it's like, what did this mean?
Hereditary mean?
Like that.
Right.
Or what did No Country for Old Men mean? Or what does this symbolize? And it's a 50 million crackpot theories, but there's some really cool stuff. You're like, oh, I never thought about it. This movie was about forgiveness of siblings, or whatever. Parental. So does that ever come into play with novelizations of movies? Because obviously movies have arcs and themes and things like that. Or is it basically, is that something that comes into play, or is that less of a thing with a novelization?
Well, I don't know what other people do, but I do that. I've been one of the nice things about writing Maxine is, I can think about what was going on in X, and I also can do echoes of Pearl in it too. Just because the visually Ty will have those kind of visual references to the movies that it's not literally tied together; it's just visually, symbolically, kind of tied together. So I try to add a couple more things like that, or accentuate it some, and try to think about reading some interviews, like whoever the writer is or director, whoever's talking about the story, and whenever do a novelization, that helps because they'll often talk about this is the theme or this is the point of the story, and I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to do that. Sometimes I'll be like, I think it's a little more like this, and then if nobody cares or notices, then I can sort of put my spin on a little bit. But I couldn't quite get away with that with Ty. Ty would be like, no, she's not thinking this at this point. And I'm like, I saw that movie. I was pretty sure she was, but I think I'll defer to you, the guy that created it and directed it.
I think he'll know. So, by the way, Ty West is my favorite director of the 21st century.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember we first you talked about was it House of the Devil? I think you were.
House of the Devil is my favorite movie.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it until you told me it was your favorite, so I checked it out almost immediately. It was great.
It's different. It's almost like counter programming of what they do nowadays.
Our last episode, what we did, we were talking about our like top 13 horror movies of the 21st century, and I made a caveat because I said I did my list, and then I realized that Ty West was on there like 4 times. And so I made a second list that was like, you can only do him once.
Yeah.
Even though I would say a movie like, I forget which one I chose, but
The Innkeepers, maybe.
no, it wasn't The Innkeepers. It was probably, shoot, I can't remember.
The Sacrament. I
it
can
wasn't
name
The
them all. I
Sacrament.
can keep
Yeah.
going.
I love
But
Sacrament.
I love Sacrament too. So
Um,
my question is though, were you in constant communication with Ty, or was there a point where like you in the beginning you kind of bounced things off each other, and Ty was like, "Dude, you got it."
No, he just. I had the people that or the editors that work for the A24 publishing. They were go-betweens. So
Okay.
I had a couple of them, and they would send pages to Ty, and they would send me either they would tell me what he said, or they might copy part of an email from him and paste it. But no, I didn't like work with him directly. I was shocked that he would even have time to read anything.
He's
To
got
be
plenty of
honest,
time.
it's just
He's the director. They're not as busy as they say they are.
well, he's
Look,
got to be living the good life at this point.
the
with all
average
the-
president of the United States takes about 16 weeks of vacation, so I'm thinking the director has
yeah.
plenty of time.
Well, he's got to keep his mind clear so he can create, fill the tank back up and then create something else. He can't be reading my stuff.
He gave us the best trilogy of the century so far, so
Right.
he gets a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
and I think people are going to be a lot kinder to Maxine once they sit down and watch all three movies back to back.
I think Maxine was incredible.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's just the way people reacted to it, and I think I think in a lot of ways he was going for that sort of chilly distance that a lot of '80s movies had, and I think people didn't understand that was something he was going for. But if you watch that with the other two movies in mind, I think it's really powerful.
well, here's where we get it, because we're men of a certain age. But when I went to the theater, I was the oldest person there by about 25 years. So they didn't have that 80s experience. And I
Right.
sensed that kind of like, what the F is going on here? Where I'm humming. Like, I feel like I've ingested as much caffeine as I possibly can. And I was just loving every minute of it. I'm like thinking Mia Goth and Ty West are in the pantheon of gods at this point from what they've done. Right. But I agree. It's probably going to take some time for people to realize what he bequeathed us. But it's going to take education, I think, on the part of a younger audience. Which, like when we grew up, we saw everything because there weren't options, right? So you had 5 channels of TV you could watch, and you see whatever movie's out there right now. Whereas now you have access to everything, but what happens is you slip into a lane. Yep. Like my kids are in their mid-20s. Tim, your daughter is probably the same age as my daughters.
Yep.
So they slip into a lane and they just know their lane. Well, I have one daughter who knows a lane and one daughter who loves a lot of different things, but she's the outlier. Like out of her friends are like, what the F are you talking about? Like they don't even know who the Addams family is.
Yeah, that's my oldest daughter, because I showed her all that kind of stuff. My youngest, she's happy to see stuff, but she didn't take to it like my oldest did. And so she's 29 and she works at a bank, and she's like, these kids, they don't know who the Addams family is. And I'm like
that's my 25-year-old. Yeah. She's like, how do people know these things?
When you're a real little kid and you love horror, you had like one horror movie might be on Saturday night. One might be on Sunday. Like you had to just find it and be like, okay, I guess I'm watching the Hammer Frankenstein, tonight.
Right.
Or,
but nowadays it's just like, I like this thing, and I found a place to watch just this thing. I don't know anything outside of my, my tunnel vision.
Yeah, because then you get to the video store, and like you and me, we're just go to the video store. Like we used to get a regular movie, and then a horror movie, like every Friday night. It was like,
or me, 5 horror movies.
Yeah,
and just try to just infect my girlfriend, who's now my wife.
I was lucky because they had a little local one that wasn't a chain, and so the guy that worked there would always recommend movies, and so I would, even though I would want to go straight to the horror, And he would, say this was a good horror one or whatever. But he'd recommend other stuff, and so I'd check it out.
Yeah.
And there weren't as many horror movies that came out after the '80s, really. So my first wife and I, we just go to anything that was supposed to be good. We just go see it. And then there was like a couple decades where all I saw was crappy kids movies in a theater.
Yep.
A lot of them were really good. I'm just, usually if there was a bad one, it was one I thought would look good, and I'd take the kids to it. And they'd be like, "Dad, seriously, this movie's awful."
It's funny. I'm going to the Mahoning Drive-In in Pennsylvania. I'm lucky enough to live right between 3 drive-ins, and they are showing The Little Mermaid and Aladdin in 35 millimeter. Disney does not give movies out other than the New Bev out in LA. They don't give their movies out to show ever. And the Mahoning Drive-In has been like begging them for years. They finally relented. So I'm taking my wife. I could care less about Disney movies, but she's a Disney fan. So we're going to be out there with a bunch of super fans this Saturday. I can't wait. Actually, it's because I took her to see these in the theater when they first came out.
Right.
So I can't wait to see her reaction, because I'm taking her next week to Friday the 13th, part 5, 6, and 7. We're sleeping at the drive-in.
There you go.
The porta potties are just abominable by 10 p.m. and we're going to be there till like 10 a.m. the next day. So I can't wait for that. But yeah, oh my God, I'm so glad we got through the cartoon phase and the bad kids movies phase.
Let me tell you about some of the novelizations that throughout my life, because I'm cleaning out the basement right now, and I found a few of my old novelizations.
Do you have the boogans? Because I have the boogans.
I don't. I have Rambo.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Rambo. I have Pale Rider.
Pale Rider? Holy cow.
I had Batman when I was a kid, and I had Clash of the Titans when I was a kid.
I had Clash of the Titans too.
But I found another one. It's not in the room, but I was trying to explain to my mom. Well, I was having dinner with her earlier. I was like, yeah, we're going to be talking about novelizations. You know what that is? I said, sometimes there's a book that they make into a movie, like Jaws.
Familiar.
And then what I have down in my basement, I have Jaws 2. So you have Jaws, and then you have the movie that was turned into a book.
Right.
So I have Jaws 2 downstairs.
Tim,
favorite part. I read Jaws 2. My favorite part of it was when the shark jumps over the boat, and the person in the boat sees baby sharks coming out. So she's pregnant, and she's having the sequels at the future sequels at that moment.
Oh my God! I got to go back and read that. I don't remember that.
It was just one little bit, and I still all these years later, I'm like, oh, that's so awesome! Here comes these little sharks.
What's your favorite novelization of all time? If you can pick one.
If reading Star Wars is fun, because at the end they didn't know there was going to be any others. So at the end, I assume they've taken this out since. But the original one, it said that Luke and Leia got together and basically lived happily ever after. Is what it says at the end. And then once the trilogy was done, I was like, that. They may not, unless you have the if you got it early enough, it may be in there. But I was just shocked because the novelization said that. I really enjoyed the Star Trek ones because I was a big Star Trek fan. But it was really cool to get to know what Star Trek movie stuff. Yeah, so I enjoyed those.
Growing up, my favorite novelization was Going in Style. Remember the movie with George Burns and Art Carney and
yes,
the other guy. I love and The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. I read those over and over again. I was a weird kid.
That's funny.
Tim, back to the Star Wars. I found my copy of Star Wars, and I went and I actually posted a picture of the page in the book that proves that Han shot first.
Han definitely shot first.
I mean, we all know it in the movie, but I was like, it's in the book too.
But they changed the fact that Luke and Leia were going to get together. So
that I need to go back and look at that because I don't remember that, but I do remember that's when Empire came out. We were all like, "Wait, what? Han?"
Yep.
I would love to read the Halloween novelization, like the original,
Yeah, you can get it now, like as an ebook.
Because Laurie was not Michael Myers, no relation whatsoever. That was the thing that Carpenter came up with later when he was pressed with making this, in his mind, stupid sequel. Which I agree. I hate Halloween 2.
I don't hate it, but I remember watching Siskel and Ebert talk about it before I saw it in the theater, and pretty much everything they said about it was true. You know,
By
in
the
terms
way,
of just yeah. Go ahead.
no way to age us saying
Yeah,
Siskel and Ebert, and we're all like,
see
yeah.
Siskel and Ebert. Well, even just talking about reading novelizations, I mean, it's even whenever I explain it to younger people, I'm like, we didn't have videos, we didn't have cable.
Nope.
If you would ever want to see a movie again, you know, once it left the theaters, they didn't stick around as long as they do now. The hits don't, you know, the hit ones.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to get the book, or you'd wait for a year for it to come on TV, network TV, and be all chopped to hell. So,
Yeah.
And hope you caught it when it showed.
yeah, right,
Which most times you wouldn't.
right, yeah, because they wouldn't show it again for another year.
Yeah.
One of the greatest thing anybody, a fan and friend of Monster Ben, Jamie Evans, sent me. I was trying to look and see because I think it's in this pile of stuff over here. It's the Night Stalker and the Night Strangler novelizations.
Ooh.
And I gotta look because I was flipped out. I'm wondering. I gotta look. I'm not sure if the Night Stalker might just be the Jeff Rice book that the show with the the Kolchak papers.
Yeah, I think it is.
But then the Night Strangler's got to be just like the Richard Matheson screenplay novelized.
Ooh.
That'll work.
Yeah, I read this. I read the second one. I mean, like any kid of that monster kid of that era, I was absolutely in love with Kolchak. So yeah, I did a book report on the Night Strangler. Yeah. And of course, like I ruined the ending. The big poster I drew was the ending where he throws the chemical at him or whatever, and he ages really bit. But I made him look like an evil hunchback with claws, and I made him look extra monstrous. But I ruined the whole thing. But yeah, it was just the movie. Did you know James Aquilone is bringing out like a hardback reprint of the limited edition of the first book with like extra stuff in it and everything.
So I heard something about that.
Yeah, I backed it on Kickstarter. I can't wait to get it.
Is that over on, was that like Moonstone or something like that does all the
Moonstone
stuff?
But no, James has got the rights to it now.
Oh,
that's great.
Yep. So yeah, he's hoping to start doing. I mean,
send me the link to that.
Start doing original novels too. So
I will get that. I have the. It was last year was the 50th anniversary of the Night Stalker, and I got this comic book.
I know. I got a story in there. It's my only comic book story I ever did.
Oh my god! I have the comic book over there.
That's crazy.
I'm gonna go get it. You guys talk.
You just all right. So I was at the Mahoning Theater a couple of weeks ago. They were showing The Crow, the original The Crow, and they had a punk rock flea market going on. So there's 40 vendors. One of them was Vinegar Syndrome. They had a novelization of Marty Gras Massacre, and I had it in my hands. It was $15. It was a mass market paperback, but it felt like it would fall apart the moment I read it.
Oh, yeah.
But I was so tempted. I was like, I can't believe there's a novelization. Oh, there we go.
That's the one.
I'm gonna find your story now. You know what? Now that you reminded me, I totally knew that and I forgot.
Did you read it already?
I definitely read his. It was the first thing I did.
Way to go, Jack. Way to remember.
I write too many things for people to remember. Mine's called The Nest.
There it is.
That's incredible, man. Of all the comic book things to do, Kolchak.
Yeah, that's like two items on my bucket list. I wanted to do a comic book story someday and a Kolchak story. And I'm like, there you go, 2 birds with 1 stone.
Done. You know what mine is? It's to do the 4th installment of It's Alive.
Oh, cool.
I'm working on it.
That's it. Yeah, and Clara Mead is the artist. Claire did a wonderful job.
That's awesome.
When I meet you in person, I'll have you sign this book.
All right.
Well, Jack, if you come to my house.
I'm so glad I mentioned that. I forgot. I wanted to.
Jack, first come to my house. and you're almost halfway to Tim. Tim, I moved to Pennsylvania, so
Right,
I'm
yeah.
I'm out of New York, so I'm getting closer to you, and then
Well,
we
just
can go
wait.
make a trip. So
Or I can come to you, so we meet like halfway. Jack and I can meet like in the middle.
I am down for that anytime, and I will bring a designated driver for myself.
Isn't Buffalo Bill's house from Silence of the Lambs somewhere in that stretch?
It's somewhere around there. Yes. That guy's every.
It's like an Airbnb. We could just all meet there.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put Tim in the basket. So you're working on Max. What here? X will be available in September, correct?
Yeah, I think September 24th, I think.
Okay. And then Pearl, when does Pearl become available?
November. Can't remember the
All
date,
right.
but probably about the same time in November.
And Maxine, you're working on right now, so that'll be sometime in 2025.
Yeah, they just say like early 2025 because they don't have the manuscript yet, so they don't know how much work it needs. Or they've done they do a really thorough editing job. I've really enjoyed working with them.
That's
The
great.
editor I work with is her name's Maya, and she just does wonderful. I can't I did a Zoom with them when we first started out, and I think that she's younger than I am. So every once in a while there'll be like a phrase I'll put in, and she doesn't know what it is, and I'm like, well, this is set in the 70s and back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But it's, but every once in a while I'm thinking maybe I should just take it out because it's not going to, if it pulls readers out of the story, most readers today. So I don't know.
They were two wild and crazy guys.
Right.
Stick to the truth. Are they going to be mass market paperback, trade paperback?
Yeah, they're going to do them in like pocketbook size.
That's my favorite.
Pocketbook.
Yeah.
That was like when I hooked up with Kensington and did Montauk Monster and a few books. I'm like, that's my bucket list. I want a book that fits in your back pocket.
Yeah.
And on your lunch break, you can take it outside and walk outside and read it. So I actually plan on buying special cases for those 3 books because those movies mean a lot to me. I can't tell you how much I love those movies, and I'm going to put them side by side with the novelizations.
Very cool.
And then I will critique you thoroughly.
Yeah, you'll buy 2 copies, and the one you'll send to me has the red pen on every.
It's what I used to do with comic books when I was a kid collecting comic books. Like if I Captain America, I buy 2, one to read, one to put in the plastic. So maybe I'll have to buy 2 of each. But who am I to criticize you? You're a Bram Stoker Award winner. You're the busiest human being in the world of writing that I know. I don't know how you do it. You're getting busier.
Yeah, it's weird. I just hit 60, and suddenly it's like you got more to write. I don't think this is ever going to happen again. The Terrifier people contacted me through, almost the same time, or the A24 people did. I mean, it was like maybe a month or 2 apart, and it was just. But other things showed up too, and I'm like, oh my god! So I've been just writing, trying to get caught up. At least with the novelizations, it's a little easier, because you have I type up all the dialogue first because I know I'm going to keep it all, and then I kind of fill in around it. And if I'm not, if they don't want me to add anything, that means the books are shorter, so that makes those, at least these 3, have been easier to write. In terms of just time, having the movies be out helps a lot too. It's not like I have to guess at what something might look like.
How long did it take you to write X?
I don't know. Less than a month. I know that. Might have been 3 weeks. I don't know.
Jackie knows. I'm kidding. Less than a month. That's amazing.
Yeah, my agent says I'm supposed to pretend it takes longer. She says, don't let him know how fast you can write.
Do you get any cool movie swag from doing this?
No, they don't ever give you anything.
What?
Nobody ever get. No, you don't ever get
a
anything.
T-shirt, a Blu-ray,
a date with Mia Goth.
Nope, nothing. My wife wouldn't appreciate that.
I think my wife would let me.
If she watched the movies, yeah, I was going to say maybe if she watched the movies, But we probably just go out and those two would end up talking all night. And I'd be like,
I think Mia
okay,
Goth
fine.
is taller than me, so that might be awkward.
I just thought of another question.
Mhm.
So, not I don't know if any of the novelizations that I've ever read have any sex in them, or maybe just a little. Whereas this
This has
trilogy
to.
is chock full of it. How graphic or tame do you go with that?
I just do what the movie has. With the scene with Howard and Pearl, I mean, so much of that, even though it's really interesting, because I remember watching that in the theater, and, and some of the younger people going, "Wow!" And I'm like, "Look at that! Look at him saying, showing older bodies, even if they were made up,
Oh my
because
God,
both of the
terrible older
actors,
bodies.
yeah, yeah." But the whole point of that is that there is like emotion in there for them, even though both of them are sick and twisted people.
Yeah.
It still was there, and so I focused on that and on to the beginning of it, and then I focused on Maxine's perspective. It's that she's underneath the bed. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Uh, so
that's the
yeah,
best part of the movie.
yeah. I whatever they do is fine. It's like in the Terrifier movies don't have sex, but they have like all
Oh, come on.
kinds of yeah. So I stay with all that. I stay with the victim's perspective in every one of those scenes, because
Let me.
I stay with the victim all the way to the end.
If that was
Because
me when
yeah,
with Mia Goth was filming in Sex in the Barn, it would have been 5 pages describing her fantastic derriere, and be like, "Dude, this is too much. You got to pull back on this."
well, who knows? Time may have read it and said,
You're right. That's why I filmed
you're
it like
doing
that.
justice. You're doing justice.
Finally, somebody gets me.
Uh,
For stuff like that, I focus more on just what Maxine was. Although I take that back. Maybe I think I was focusing on what everybody was seeing, because the script might have taught. I think the script was talking about how mesmerizing she was to everybody in that
yeah,
moment. And I thought, well, that's really cool, because I can describe that in a way that you can't quite do in a sequence of shots. I thought so.
I love the
That was a great scene.
correlation between Maxine and Pearl,
Hmm.
where Pearl had the drive and the fantasizing, but not the talent or the
Hmm.
cutthroat. I'll do whatever I got. Where Maxine
Hmm.
is she's just the next she's 2.0. It's like
Right,
1.0
right.
failed, 2.0 is going to succeed no matter what. And I think Maxine is one of the best characters we've seen in a long,
Hmm.
long time. Like, did you fall in love with her as flawed and as effed up as she is? Did you fall in love with her as you were following her progress?
Yes, I fell in love with Pearl more though. I think it's such a
You did.
deep it's such a deeper movie. There's more in the script between her and her mom that I thought was really cool. Um,
Mhm.
a little bit more with her and Howard, and some stuff with the just a little bit here and there, but it just
Right.
gave me more insight into the character. And in some ways, Pearl is actually sort of a triumph, because she does accept who she is. Like she says, I'm making
That's
the best
true.
of what I got. And it's like, then she becomes this, serial killer, sexual sadist for the next,
Yeah.
what, 40 years, 50 years?
Right.
Uh,
Are the
Fifth,
last 5 pages of the novelization? She's still smiling. She's still smiling. She's still smiling.
no, I came up with, I'm not going to say what it is, but I came up with a last line that I thought would encapsulate that as best I could,
I
because
can't wait to
there
see
is
it.
no damn way to replicate that. I'll never forget sitting in the theater and watching that and
Yeah.
knowing exactly what they were both doing, what Ty and Mia were doing with that.
it
It
was
was just
amazing.
wonderful. Yeah, but no,
What?
the thing about Maxine, I wonder, is if all that stuff hadn't happened, if they just were able to make their film and then get on out of there, I don't know if she would have gone anywhere. It's like Pearl may have actually helped create her
Right.
in a lot
Yeah.
of ways, or at least push her up to that next level. So I don't know. That's some of the things I'm playing around with, some of that in in Maxine, and we'll see how much of that survives.
Right. I literally can't wait to buy and own and read these books.
Well, you have to let me know what you think. I
This is
really
the
like to
most
hear, good and bad.
anticipated novelizations I've had since the Boogans.
They should put
I
that
had a
on the
fan.
book.
I had a fan send me the
That's the
Boogans.
blurb.
I love the Boogans. Like, I love the movie, and the book was even better. I was like, holy cow, who can believe this? But like, I don't read a lot of novelizations now.
Yeah.
So the fact that this hooked my attention so much, and Tim, I love you,
Mhm.
but it could have been anybody, and I would have been very interested. But knowing you did it, it goes to like another level of super interest.
Yeah,
Because
I'm sure if somebody else had done them, I would have bought them too. I'd really be
yeah,
interested to read them.
Well, Hunter, I don't know if you were in on the conversation last week. We were talking about who is the target audience because Session 9 is getting a novelization.
I saw
And
that.
I'm very excited to read that. I love that movie, and I want to see what sort of insight you get from reading the novelization because there's deleted scenes in that. There's a lot going on. But we were talking like, who's the audience? Is it mainstream readers or is it just movie fans? Are most people reading these things?
Are
You
there
think, or
mainstream
some
readers?
people probably just get it for the collectability of it? Like, what are your thoughts on the audience who reads novelizations?
Yeah, it's interesting. Uh, the the Terrifier people, they had never done a book before, so they were trying to figure out the way they wanted to do it, and eventually they partnered with Titan, but it took a little while from the time it was announced till the time it was ready to order. And every day I do like the ego search on Google just to see if there's like a review, or a lot of times people be like, oh yeah, I'll tag you when this interview comes out, and they just forget, and so I
Yeah.
can go ahead and promote it then. And then I saw somebody asked a question on Reddit. They were like, what happened to that? And so I'm just like, I just show up and I just answer the question, and then I just stay out because I don't want to intrude in a space where people are talking, about it. And but whatever reasons, Reddit now thinks they have to tell me every damn time somebody posts about Terrifier 2. And so seeing that they were asking that same kind of question. It's like, who the hell's going to read these things? And it was the same thing. I, for whatever reasons, I think I'm getting the probably because just my name. I'm seeing discussions about the X trilogy books on there. They're like, who the hell's going to read this? And a lot of people are like, I will. I can't wait for all the reasons that we read it. They want deleted scenes. They want to get more into the character's perspective. So yeah, I think a lot of people, in a lot of ways, it's like, why the hell would you go see Lion King in the theater? It's Lion King, but it's also a different experience. So it's like if you imagine a work of art like well, you can if it's a sculpture, but if you imagine like a story, like a three-dimensional object, you get a chance to start looking at it from all these different angles, and you get a richer experience overall. But that doesn't work for everybody. Other people are like, nope, it's not going to be the movie, and that's the end of that. So,
Well,
but I
Tim,
don't know who the audience is for the older movies.
it's hard.
I think just die-hard horror people.
We've been to plenty of book signings. We've been to signings together.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you have somebody look at one of your books? Like, first of all, most people walk by like you're going to give them some rare form of cancer by doing eye contact. But when you do get somebody and they look at your books and they go, "Is this a movie?" I get that somebody, "Is this a movie?"
Mm-hmm.
Be like, "Yep, it is a movie." Now you have to do the A/B test from the asking to the purchasing. Like, do you find more people buy the book that's already a movie when you do a signing?
Oh yeah, because yeah, but they don't want it because I wrote it. They want it because they like Michael Myers, or they like Alien, or they like Supernatural. I mean, some people, once they've read one of mine, or they'll talk about, oh, Tim did a great job, and maybe they'll check out something else. But I don't know how many Supernatural fans are also Terrifier fans. It's really, I'm sure there's some overlap.
The Venn
but
diagram.
Yeah, but it's probably not like a circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's one of those things that, when I was just starting out, I mean, a lot of people wrote tie-ins would talk about that. You don't really expect there to be a whole lot of carryover for audience. I'm hoping we'll see. I mean, because of especially because the Terrifier books are a little closer to, because I could add, I mean, a Terrifier book. I mean, I didn't say books, Terrifier book. It's because I could add stuff in it. It's a lot more like a book of mine in a
Right.
lot of ways. So maybe, who knows? People might be interested in checking out some of my original stuff. That would be nice. But if they just enjoy these books too, that's wonderful. I'm not complaining.
Horror is a weird space because your
Yeah.
horror movie fans are guys predominantly, but your readers, any reader, is women.
Yeah.
So I'm always like confused. I'm like, I got so many women readers, more so than guys, but more guys like horror, and like they kind of like drag, like I did. I dragged my girlfriend, now wife, into horror. But she just prefers reading like true crime and stuff like that. She doesn't like to read horror, but she loves to watch horror. It's just a weird, horror is a very weird place.
Right.
I enjoy it, but it's a strange, you never know what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think a lot of people, they don't like inviting stuff into their heads because it's too intimate. That's why some people are like, oh, Neil Gaiman's been accused of, sexual abuse. I'm never reading one of his books again, because they don't want to, they imagine inviting, a person who allegedly, is his sexual abuser into their heads. Other people are like, I'm just reading this book. And so I think
Right.
that a lot of times it's the same way. I think some people can watch a horror movie because, they could turn it off anytime they want. There's distance from it. It's not in their heads. They could close their eyes. It's, but you're reading it. And if you're somebody that really gets into reading, almost like you're experiencing it, which hasn't happened to me since I was a kid, but I remember it really well. Like when I first
A
started reading
movie's
Stephen King, that's what his books were like to me.
a
So
movie's a
I think that's fine.
short-term experience, where a book is a
Yeah.
long-term investment.
Right.
Unless you're like me, it's like 4 days.
But
I'm out.
often a novelization is kind of a shortcut to reading because they're often shorter. Most of the time when you're reading a novelization, you already have seen the movie. So it's a faster. So like when you talk about somebody who might be hesitant to sit down and read it, or even anything, a normal sized book.
Me.
But they're like, okay, we're going to be at the cabin this summer for a week. Oh, I'll read the novelization of Terrifier or whatever, Halloween.
Right.
Because it's fun. I'm a horror fan, and this is easy reading. I don't have to think a lot. I could just enjoy it.
Yeah, I wonder how many people, at least of our generation, started to read other things because they got into novelizations.
I think that was
the same
my
way,
gateway.
Yeah, and people who read comics then started reading, just
Comics.
other types of literature.
Right here.
Yeah, because I used to read a lot, and then I hit junior high and stopped and watched TV mostly. But then I got into superhero comics, and then I got into all comics, and then I started reading again, and I never stopped. So
I'll tell you what, when I was like 5th or 6th grade, I'm a huge Hammer fan and Dracula. I read Dracula. I was expecting to read a novelization of the book, and I was like, what the hell is this thing?
That was a tough book to read in like middle school.
Yeah,
like,
I first tried to read it when I was in 4th grade, and I was like, I've never finished it.
I think I was in 6th grade.
Yeah, it's hard. Frankenstein's.
Yeah.
I don't know what's even harder. They're both difficult because
I never read Frankenstein
in a different way. I am of the Hemingway generation, like the writing from there. You get pre-Hemingway, I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I can get through this. I try.
Yeah, a big part of that, I think, is just when cinema started to be a thing, and then especially later TV, because once people had a visual imagination, or at least a data bank of images to draw on, you didn't have to write 5 pages about what the place setting looked like for Christmas dinner. But people that they were not of a class to have nice china or whatever, never had seen it. They had no way. So to them, they would need all those details. So for people like us, I think it's really hard to read literature from 200 years ago.
Yeah, let's do the place setting for 3 pages with no white space whatsoever. It's
Right,
really
right.
tough for a modern
Yeah.
reader. But I get it. I mean, if that's not your experience, you're totally engrossed in it because you're not inundated. Like we're inundated. It's like impossible, like to carve out your time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
experience all the things you want to experience. Where back then it was like almost impossible to fill your time. There wasn't much.
Right.
And that's why
Yeah,
I always
and
call
they were
myself a
written
post
for,
Hemingway reader writer.
yeah. I think it's a good way to draw, sort of a demarcation line, really.
Mhm.
I think Hemingway's a good place to do that.
To speak, I've been looking for his play he did on the Spanish Civil War, and he did like
Mhm.
5 stories. I've been looking for that forever, and whenever I find a copy, it's like it's $100, $200. So I found one for 2, and I just got it like 2 days ago. It looks like it's been dragged behind a Ram truck on rough road, but I'm like, I don't care because I read it once in a library in Connecticut.
Mhm.
I haven't read it in 20 years. And I'm like, I want to own this. And
Mm.
even though it looks like, someone's vomited on the whole thing, I'm treasuring this book. And
Mm.
so I can't wait to dive into it. But I know there's a lot, you teach college, so I'm sure there's a lot of pushback against Hemingway as the man. Like you got to sometimes separate the man from the product and the writing. And I just sometimes his writing is kind of rough, but it's indicative of the period that he was writing in. And
Mm.
just because it makes you uncomfortable, you just can't erase history and just disregard it. It's what got you to where you are right now. It's a
Right.
step to get to what you read now and enjoy.
I'm pro banning books.
Jack's middle name is Fahrenheit 451.
Hey man, I did a book report on Fahrenheit 451 in 6th grade, same year I read Dracula, and you had to do like a
Oh my God, what a rough year for you.
make it like a artsy craftsy thing. So
Right.
I created like a flamethrower that the tube of it had like a funnel at the end,
Right.
and I filled it with red, yellow, and orange confetti, and then I went like that and flamethrown the front row of the classroom with it.
It's awesome.
It is
I
cool.
love it. Jack, do you have another question?
No, I am sped. I'm so happy I
Sped?
remembered
Wanna light
that
up?
I had this and that you reminded me you're in it, because I remember when I bought this being like, hey, I know somebody in this book.
All right, Tim, I have one last question for you.
All right.
Before we have you on again. Outside of horror, what's your favorite book to read? Is there a book that you read and reread?
I had a teacher in it might have actually been the same class where I did that Kolchak book report. I read the novelization of the Disney film, the Mystery of Dracula's Castle, which was just these two kids that wanted to make a movie at a lighthouse, and they would, they thought make a good castle for Dracula. And then of course the mystery has nothing to do with Dracula. And I finished it. I'm like, this is good. And I went up and, I told her, I'd like to do a report on this. And she did you just read it? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'll read it again. She's like, no, you shouldn't read a book like that. Read a new book.
Read it
And so all my life I've been, so all my life I've had, it's really weird, but I've had trouble like going back to reread a book. I've done it a few times. So often I'm looking for stuff that's just new or different, or by people,
Right.
something new by somebody I really like their writing. One of the books that I read the like first word to last word was a replay by Ken Grimwood, which is really cool. It's about two people that they both, it feels like they die in their 40s, and then they start again like in their at middle school, and it takes a while till they meet each other, and it's only because one of them she marries young Steven Spielberg, and he starts making some different movies, and the guy's like, what the hell? And he actually finds her, and so then they start finding each other constantly. And as they go through this 20-30 year cycle over and over, and you get to see what goes on between them and how the world changes because of what they decide to do. I just thought it was really, really good. I like that one a lot. Another favorite reading experience was when I read Catch-22, because I had an old copy that literally fell apart in my hands as I read it. And I'm
I
like,
have a hardcover that I found in the little free library a couple of months ago.
yeah,
I'm
that's
going to
cool.
dive in soon.
I ended up reading the Dragonlance books, the first, the ones that were even though they were based on role playing game, they were released at the time like they were just books. And so I read those. I've reread them. I ended up writing a couple young adult Dragonlance novels, so I reread them again. Before I did that, it was a long time ago, like 25 years ago. But
Yeah,
so I've read those maybe more than a lot of things. So
I will tell
I don't
you,
know.
I reread, and going back to Hemingway. Yep, I'm sure you've read A Movable Feast.
Hmm.
I read that book every year. My sister gave me a copy in 1995, and now we're going on 29 years. I read it every year, once a year. And I always do it kind of before I'm going to jump into a book, writing a book.
Hmm.
It kind of recharges my batteries. And I
Hmm.
wish that I was in Paris in the 1920s and writing a book. Um, that kind of gets me going every year
That's
for
awesome.
whatever reason.
I've thought of a last question.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
I've heard other podcasts ask this kind of question, and this is something that's so me and Hunter that I want to start making it part of when we have guests. And the answer could be no, or whatever comes to your mind. Have you ever seen a ghost or had some sort of weird paranormal experience?
Oh, boy.
It's sure, but like with anything, all you have to do is say, hey, human brain, we don't even know for sure if we see reality. You don't know. It's everything's interpreted by your senses and in your brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had a couple. I wrote a little tiny flash fiction piece based on one that I had. One night I was we didn't have air conditioning when I was growing up, not till high school, and so the windows were open at night, and
I
I
didn't
thought I was
either.
hearing.
I
Yeah.
hear you on that. My dad had a fan he got from the fucking military. He put it in my window and it blew the air out of my window around the top of the house. Never made it its way back into my room. But I swear to
That's
God,
awful.
I lost 60% of my hearing out of one ear from that effing fan
I wouldn't be
that he put in my
surprised.
window.
This is why I ended up watching soap operas in summer because it couldn't move during the day, and my mom would have soap operas on, and so I'm like, but became a fan just because. But at any rate, I heard what I thought was like almost like cicadas, and then what I saw very vividly two glowing eyes at the foot of my bed, and then I realized it wasn't quite. It was like a combination of cicada song and rattlesnake rattle, and I'm like, I thought it was like a snake, and then the eyes started swaying like this, and they kept coming closer and closer, and I'm absolutely paralyzed, and I can't move. And they get to a point where if it was physical, it should be, I could feel it, moving across my legs, up my stomach. The eyes move, but I don't feel a thing.
Yeah.
And at the last, I don't know how close it got, maybe up to the point probably almost to my chest. And my paralysis broke, and I had a little, lamp over. It was hanging onto the headboard, so I could just reach up and turn it. And there was nothing there. And so I've had some other ones that were really weird, but that's the only one where I saw something. My friends and I were driving on a country road one night, and we saw a woman in white. It was really
Oh,
wild. She was standing at the edge of the road, right there, in a white kind of almost like a shroud. She was
Oh,
pale,
boy.
and we went by, and her face did not register us in any way, shape, or form. And we all saw her. And of course, he's probably just somebody in a costume,
You
mhm.
out there
never
messing with
know.
people in the country. But yeah, I mean, that was the other vivid one. Other
Jack and
things
I
are
went
just
out
more
looking.
like, yeah. Go ahead.
Jack and I went looking for a woman in white in the cemetery, and we got a EVP.
Oh, cool.
Just two like dumbasses in the cemetery during the day, not at night. We were keeping it legal, and we caught something. So, and I lived in a
Very
haunted
cool.
house for 20 something years. So
Yeah, I
I
think you
kept
told me
waiting for
that
Jack
before.
to
That
see
was familiar.
yeah, I did a book, The Waiting, with Sam
Hmm.
Hain way back in the day. And Don was like, well, I can't do a true story. So, by the way, that's my cat meowing. He's going nuts right now. We have a visiting dog, and we've locked him away.
the cemetery where we got the EVP is a couple of miles from my sister's house, and his daughter found the clip. And he calls me on my cell phone. I'm at my sister's house. The sun is setting. I'm getting in the car, looking in the direction of where the cemetery, if I was to get in the car. And he goes, "Hey, we got something." And it was responding to a question you asked. And I'm like, "You're kidding me." I'm like, practically, I'm going to drive right by the exit that's like a mile from this place. You're saying this to me now when I'm going to be in a dark car by myself, practically driving by the place. I don't want to know this until I get home.
That's right, brother. Good luck.
That's awesome.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, well, those are awesome stories. I'm purely terrified now. Okay.
Well, next, if you have me on again, ask me about the experience I had that proves that you can change the future, except it's damn hard to do. I had a psychic experience.
All right.
Teaser.
That is a perfect teaser. Holy cow. Yeah. Tim, this is an honor. Thank you. By the way, the Monster Men, we were in a crypt for a very long time. We just emerged from our sarcophagi, and we're trying to get back into the groove. So I think there's no better way than to have you on the show again. And I bow to you, man. Like, I feel like I'm too tired to do as much as you do. I'm doing ghostwriting at this point, which I feel is like novelization, because you're trying to appeal to a certain base and a certain point of view and the voice and everything like that. But what you're doing, just, oh my God, you're living my life. And I hate you as much as I love you.
I understand. Well, thanks for having me on. I love being with you guys because it's a conversation. I don't feel like other people are going to hear it, but it's not like we're performing or anything. So, and who else do I get to talk to about this kind of stuff?
Exactly.
That's what's great about stuff like this or going to a convention. It's like everybody will know, oh, yeah, that TV movie you saw in 1970, whatever, that was great. I saw that too.
And by the way, I guarantee you don't do many podcasts where one of the hosts, at least, is so hammered. He's happy to just be hanging on.
Hanging on to a cat, apparently.
Can you hear him?
Oh, yeah.
He's the size of a puma.
Sounds like you're in Pet Cemetery.
My church, you're going to go out soon. The Micmac burial ground is waiting for you.
I want to play with you, Hunter.
My in-laws brought a brand new puppy to the house.
Oh,
and
no.
Immediately, he's like, attack the puppy.
Yep.
I think now he needs to go to the bathroom. Him and me both, probably. So,
all right.
Perfect place to end.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, Tim.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much for having me, guys.
All right, everybody. We'll let you know when the book's out. But where are people going to be able to get this book, by the way?
That's a good question. I mean, Terrifier 2 comes like 2 weeks, I think, after X, but you can get that.
Wow.
Terrifier 2, since it's from Titan, it's coming out, you can get it anywhere.
Anywhere.
824, I know that they're going to sell it on their site. Also, I know they partnered with a small press publisher, I remember, so that they can get it distributed into bookstores. But that's all I know. I don't even know if there's going to be an ebook to tell you the truth. I have no clue.
I don't want
know
that
they've sent some e-arcs out, so I'm assuming that there's going to be an ebook too. Yeah. So I guess just watch on social media, follow me. Just check my website eventually. I'll let everybody know.
Awesome, and we'll promote it and send people your way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bury in a little bit. Just so you all
bury him. All right, let's wrap this up. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Tim, thanks for being a great guest. Hunter, get some sleep, and we'll see everybody next time on
Monster Men.